Good to go.
Yeah, so I would just talk about Clemson and, end up picking a different guy. And to this day, when I see Coach Leggett, I tease him all the time. So, um, it ended up just working out. Maryland was a place that I probably should have been the whole time, and we weren't good necessarily when I was here. My senior year, we got to 34-21. It was the best season in the history at that point, and so I've seen it come from the low scholarship, the lack of investment in baseball, to kind of turning the tide when I came back with when Coach Chef came, and literally some of the best moments of my life in 14 and 15, winning those two regionals and versus number one seeds, and kind of just seeing everything come to fruition since then. So it's been a great time for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that. That's absolutely insane. So I think social media has made it weird because sometimes you kind of know someone without ever meeting, and that's how me and you kind of fall into it. I've really enjoyed the hitting stuff you put out there. I think when you're watching a lot of hitters or you're watching hitting coaches, it looks like a lot of them fall into buckets. Like you can tell, all right, these are your high level pattern guys. Like they all coach this or that's what they're coached. You seem like you steal from everybody. So I was curious to see like if you have quote unquote like bigger influences, if there's anyone that you really like in particular, and kind of how that your hitting philosophy in general kind of shaped.
Yeah, I think I've always just come from the fact that everyone's different. I've always believed in that. Going back from my childhood days, I'm watching a game the other day with Cal Ripken, and when he broke the streak, and I'm looking at different hitters, Eric Davis. Everyone's different, and if you at some point try to fall into one mold and make Maxwell Costas, who's 6'3" and 220 pounds, with maybe a second baseman that needs a few years in the weight room and needs to just get a little bit stronger, I think you're doing them a disservice. So I think from that standpoint, I've always tried to stay open-minded and not cookie cut people, because I just don't think, especially in a sport like baseball where it's so difficult to hit, it's one of the hardest things to do in sports. There's no reason to fall into that. I'm not saying you can't adopt things from different coaches, but, I always think it's comical when, I post something and I'm not even literally referencing something, but it's, a guy that's a HLP guy or something immediately attacks it and picks it out to fit the narrative. And I've always just been to try to, what can I do for this kid to make him the best he can be? And if he says swing down to make him do it right in the game, then swing down, and that's the nuances and the minutia that gets lost on the internet, is the fact that every single kid learns differently. They all have different internal, external cues. And the majority of time I spend working with guys is to learn that. That's it. That's what I have to do, because development to me is not me telling you what to do. It's you being able to do it on your own at 9:00 at night, or if you get the chance to become a pro baseball player. So that's really development to me, and where kind of the individualistic approach I try to take with every single guy.
Yeah. So saying that, the other day you touched on, being selfless as a coach. I think that goes into your hitting style, but even just in general, helping your guys, what are some of the things you believe in, and, you believe in what coaching is for you, and even some of the guys on your staff.
Yeah, I think from just an overall perspective, like you got to have a competitive nature. Like for me, whether it's recruiting or whatever, if you're not competitive, I just think it's not going to translate at a higher level. Unfortunately, that's probably one of my downfalls. And some people would probably say that, we have staff basketball games, man, we're almost at blows sometimes because we're so competitive. So I think just from the baseball playing aspect, you got to be competitive. And that's going to fit into your kind of culture as a whole. You got to be, we talk about growth mindset, which is just being what I talk about on the hitting Twitter. Just got to be open-minded, and some ownership and toughness. And then the toughness kind of comes into some competition stuff. Specifically on the hitting side, I think there's just a few basic things for human principles that I think that most coaches could agree on. I really, I focus more on movement based as a hitting coach than I do a specific, you know, HLP hip or a specific slot or, you know, load the scap. I don't have one specific thing. I focus on movements. And I think when kids, so many times, it's more about timing and balance than anything. So I would say that half of my hitters, when I come in, they're not balanced when they land. Their timing's late. And all of a sudden, you're going to create a whole bunch of problems from that right off the bat. So I know that sounds about as simple as possible, but you'd be surprised, even at a high level, you know, I'm focusing on timing and balance first, before we even get anywhere else. So those are probably two of my biggest things is timing and balance, and then obviously, um, you know, just based off movement, and you know, we can get a little bit more into detail about the swing and what I really believe in and why. But balance and timing are two big things that I think every coach from 10 years old up can focus on, and you can find a lot of problems within that right by itself. And just to give you an example, a couple of my guys were struggling early in the season. Coach, what's wrong with my swing and all that? I bring him in, show him video. I said, dude, you're just starting your leg lift when the pitch is almost coming out of his hand. Like, you're already beat. You have no chance.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but I'm out in front. And I said, well, when you're late, you're actually going to speed up everything. And that's why you're out in front. You're actually late. You're not out in front. You know what I mean? So little things like that just like, wow, okay.
Blow their mind.
Yeah, they're just like that. Okay. So, but you have to show them. Maybe that kid's a visual learner, but that's all I had to do was just show the center field cam and how late he's been for the last week, and just kind of cleared up that way instead of saying, oh, let's try this with your mechanics. So I think a lot of problems can be diagnosed just going back to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a dead on point. That again, like, that might not get you a bunch of retweets on Twitter, but guess what? Like, it's going to help the vast majority of hitters out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're obviously going to have some younger players and probably parents that are working with their younger players.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of advice would you give, you know, a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old or their parents while they're working on hitting?
I think, man, it's just like such a fine line, because kids that are young, I think, need a lot of external cues, and just kind of like to play the game, you know what I mean? Instead of a lot of technical stuff, but it's a fine line. It's like, when do I shift that? Is it like 12, 13, 14 when I start getting into more mechanical based stuff? Because when you see movement patterns, to me, it's crazy. Like, you'll see little kids, you see these big leaguers posting pictures of the kids hitting and all that, and their movement patterns are way better than, you know, the 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, because it hasn't been coached out of them yet. Right. So, you know, it's a fine line, you know, that like, hey, when do I start getting in some technical stuff? But I think, again, it all comes back to movement, and understand that, like, if you're putting kids in good positions, you know, the results are going to happen. If you're chasing bat speed with a bat sensor off a tee and your engine gets big, you know, chances are it's going to take longer for me to coach it out of you when you get here. So, you know, there's all this data out there, but we're actually promoting motor patterns that's going to end up being worse for them in the long run. And I'm not saying that the data is not useful. I'm not saying it can't help, because it's definitely a tool, but it shouldn't be pre-programmed into their head. And that's my opinion. So, you know, again, I'm always going to come back to the movements, and there's plenty of things you could do with med balls and PVC or other tools to promote force transmission, but you can't just build it up through bat speed and rotation stuff and all that, because they're gonna chase numbers, and it's gonna do them a disservice as they get older.
For sure. So if I'm a dad taking my younger son out to hit, do you think like challenging BP, plyo balls, like what type of tools or like simple constraints would you recommend?
I for young kids, to be honest with you, like, the best thing that ever happened to me was my dad had a very, very narrow backyard, right? And he would throw tennis balls to me. And if I pulled the ball, or, you know, I hit it to right field, I'd lose the balls and I couldn't play anymore. So I had to hit it up the middle. So a simple visual constraint really, really helped me as I move forward because I was in the middle of the field. So even if it's putting up the turtle right on their butt and, forcing the ball into the middle of the field, just simple visual constraints like that where you don't even have to say much, that alone will get their direction right, right? If they're worried about bat speed and a big engine, they're going to start hitting the left side of the cage, or they're going to start popping up. Naturally, just that visual constraint of putting them in this little small window, they'll have to start to figure it out. You know what I mean? And maybe little things like that, and it depends how advanced he is. But sometimes the little bit of the old school stuff of just doing stuff like that is better than trying to say, hey, let's go out here and work on hitting the ball the other way, or mixing pitches, or all that. I would just keep it simple, and you know what I mean, and give some visual constraints, and just kind of let them figure it out.
Nice.
That made me laugh because I'm out front with my little guy all the time, hitting with the wiffle ball.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a little cul-de-sac, and there's gutters obviously on the end, and he hates hitting the ball on the street
Mm-hmm.
because he lost like 4 wiffle balls already, and he like breaks his heart every time. So he literally, like, just him himself, tries not to hit the ball in the street, left or right field. It's pretty funny. That little story made me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more opportunity. You guys in itself, there wasn't the facilities there is today, and I think development can be better. But sometimes we misconstrue that with just because we have the ability to have a hit tracker, a bat sensor, that means we're going to solely focus on that type of training.
Sure.
For sure. So I'm curious because being a hitting coach, one way to be a really good hitting coach is recruit good hitters, right? So when you're out on the road, what kind of traits are you looking for from your offensive guys?
Yeah, for me, so I spent my first 5 years in more like administration with the team. So this has literally only been the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm just kind of getting some of the guys I recruited. So I think that's helpful for people too, is because I've been a coach for a long time and I've been around the game, but I haven't specifically delved into this arena till pretty recently. So for me, it comes back to, again, like how the body moves, direction, efficiency, and all that. Like, you'll hear from traditional coaches, man, he's got major bat speed, or you even see it tweeted from, PBR or a perfect game. But, I'm actually looking at the opposite. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily looking at what's his bat speed. I'm looking at what he's doing in the game, how he's moving in the game, how he moves in the box. And obviously it's different for position to position, but I'm big on a slot type of thing too. So for me, it's like everything kind of happens with the balance at the landing position. So what can you do from the landing position to when you're going to make contact with the ball? Are you efficient? I'll use that word a million times. Is he efficient within that? Or, does he hit a ball hard, go 1 for 4 with a home run, but strike out 3 times? So I don't have anything necessarily specific to give you that's going to wow a kid that you're going to share this with in your organization, other than the fact of, I want to be efficient. So when we talk about bat speed, right, I don't care about bat speed. I think it's the most overrated thing out there. I care about bat quickness. And what that means is basically the time to contact. I care about that. Can he be efficient in that small window? Not does he have an 80-mile-an-hour bat speed? So for me, it's efficiency. No different than if I'm looking at a middle infielder. He may not look pretty, but does he make the play? Does he move his feet well? And is he efficient in getting the ball over there? I think efficiency is a better word that I would use, other than just tools that most hitting coaches would use and say, hey man, that kid's got some bat speed, man. He can really juice the ball here. He's got pop. Like, no, I'm not. We've had 4 guys that are under 5'9" drafted in the past 4 or 5 years. So it's I would argue that I'd prefer the tight movers and the compact guys that I would the loose movers. So.
And
No,
everything's a preference. And if you could just share the importance of, even so for us as an organization, our coaches all being together and believing in the same thing and building culture from, the top down. The importance of, all your guys, your volleys, and the importance of all you guys galvanizing together and pulling the same rope is just important as the players.
Yeah, I'm spinning right now. I've spent literally the past week and a half putting together like a 2 or 3 hour presentation just for my staff. And I'm doing that because, our other coaches don't think like me. So sometimes we may disagree on a drill, but if I don't put in front of them why I disagree with it and explain it very clearly and have clarity, it's exactly what you're talking about. I may be working on something with a guy in a cage, but then, he goes outside and there's a different cue that's being misconstrued, and that in itself is going to hurt the player. So if they don't understand what I'm saying, it's my fault. So I've literally been spending a week of my time putting all this stuff together because this is a good time to do it when we're not playing. And that's just for our staff. So you hit the nail on the head. I think it's super important from the top down to have those tough conversations, to get on the same page, to spit out some ideas. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to explain it and why. And that's the biggest thing. So it's a good point that you brought up, because I'm doing that with just 3 other guys on the staff right now, just trying to get on the same page. And I'm sure there's going to be some tough conversations and some arguments and some questions after that. But that's the beauty of the game.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're doing that for the coaches, what kind of conversations are you having with the players? Because I assume it's something similar, right?
Yeah,
I think I'm a freshman day one. Like, what's that look like on your end?
Yeah, so the fall for me is pretty specific right now. The first 3 weeks I just watch. So, I'll bring them in. I'll do some movement pattern stuff. I'll do some drills, but I won't tell them anything, because I think the quickest way to lose a kid is, here he is. He's been in your organization. He's one of your top players. And in the first 3 days, I'm telling him, no, that's not going to work. This is what you're going to do, and change it up. So that in itself is my time to just watch, evaluate. Maybe he does need to fail a little bit. Maybe he's doing well. I don't care if he's hitting on top of his head. If he's hitting, I'm not going to say anything to him. I don't care how bad it looks. So, for me, the first 3 weeks I'm watching. I will take them through movement patterns. I will tell them what I care about. I will explain that, but I won't force them to do it yet, and I won't say it. I'll just watch. Once we kind of get into that for 3 weeks, what I do for the rest of the fall is I do individualized programs. So I do them in 3-week increments, where not every player is doing something different when they come in with me. They're all not doing the same thing. So I'm establishing things that I think they need to work on, but I'm giving them individual programs per who they are before they go outside for the day. So we kind of do that in 3-week increments. And by the time they get to Christmas, they have 8 to 12 exercises and variability that they've been doing that hopefully clean up some movements to make them more efficient. And by that time, I would expect that they have a little bit better sense of their body, what I'm talking about, who they are. And sometimes it's tough, man. Randy Bednar was a great high school player, came in and really struggled as a freshman and just kept wanting to do it his way. And he's been training this way. And he just had to fail miserably his first year, and, he's finally gotten into that a little bit. It took some time for him, some soul searching, not just ability or what I told him. It's just, as a baseball player, when you fail, you're going through a lot of tough things. So, and now he's one of the best hitters in the conference. So sometimes it takes kids longer than others. Some kids, like I said, are just different learners. So we spent a lot of time in the fall observing, then building up some movement profiles. And then, when we get into the spring, I really condense that into all timing and balance stuff and time to compete. So I'll make some minor changes if I see something that's just completely glaring. But most of the time we use the fall to kind of build someone up, and then the spring to kind of get after it.
Nice. That's really cool. it's really awesome to see that each player has their own individualized routine too.
Yeah.
Do you let the guys have say in that, or is it that maybe something they earn?
No, I mean,
Um,
here's the thing. I'll tell guys, and Coach Vaughn, a couple of the coaches said I was crazy. I let a kid's parent come in the cage with me one time, and I'm a college coach. He literally was like, "This is what I think, and that's how I train him." I said, "All right, let's go in the cage. I want to hear it." And I took an hour and listened to him, and then I just literally said, "This sounds right, but this is actually what's happening." You know, so for the kids, if they say, "Coach, I'm used to doing this. I'm comfortable doing this." Sure, sounds good. Why? Why are you doing it? They need to tell me why. It can't just be a feel thing, okay? If you're Mike Trout and A-Rod and you tell yourself to swing down, but you don't do it in the game, you know, if they perform like Mike Trout and A-Rod, guess what I'm going to say? You go do that.
Go for it.
I'm not going to say anything. So as long as there's some merit to kind of why they're doing it and have them understand that, I'm fine with it. I'm all about routines and comfort. I think it's a big part in baseball. But we're not going to just do it because I've been doing it since I was 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
No,
sure.
that's pretty cool. It's dealing with you and talking with you, and there's a sense of confidence. So I'm sure you look for those same traits when you're recruiting a hitter, and that's big on the mental side. And you don't have to talk and tell everybody you're cocky, but there's a certain way you need to handle yourself and have that type of body language, and that confidence to step in the box, to really give yourself a chance. So, dealing with somebody as confident as you as a hitting coach, is that something you feel you can teach and help, maybe if you see a good hitter that isn't as confident, or do you just try to, look for those type of guys?
Yeah, man. Like, I think I've got some unique experience. My brother died in high school. My sister died of cancer in her 30s. My mom has cancer now. So I come from a unique experience of having dealt with a lot of things early in my life that most people have not. But also being a super alpha male competitor. I had DeMatha at Maryland. So I can kind of understand both sides of it, going through some tough times, but also, knowing what it takes to compete at a very high level. So we spend a lot of time on the mental game, on routines. I make my kids meditate every single day. So they meditate in the cage with me for 3 minutes before they go outside, whether they like it or not, whether they think it's stupid or not, because I know it's going to end up being beneficial at some point for their central nervous system, for their thought process for the day, whatever. And then on game day, I kind of let them implement that into what they want to do. I don't force them to do it on game day. I do an optional one in the hotel or in a meeting room beforehand. But I think that's key, what you said, because now more than ever, especially with social media, the instant gratification, the false sense of a lot of security that some of those things give, um, makes it a really, really tough thing when a kid actually fails for the first time. And most times he's not going to do that in high school. So I'm also dealing with a new environment in college and a kid who's seriously failing for the first time in his life, that he's or really probably hasn't been through a lot of life experiences, and that's very tough to manage. But unfortunately, from what I've been through, I'm able to relate to most of the kids in some form or fashion, um, and kind of just get down to a micro level with them about that, and then how to attack it. Whether it's from a routine standpoint, maybe a sports psychologist, which we have now in Maryland, or just little things like that, and kind of implement, hey, you can be tough and compete, but you also need to be mindful of stuff like this. So I think we've done a good job with that, trying to blend those two together.
Well, sorry to hear about your family first off, especially your mom right now. That's got to be really tough. It's really interesting to hear you talk about the mental side, because I definitely think that's ignored by a lot of players. And unfortunately, like, they literally need to fail miserably, like you said about Bednar, before they buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you give guys things to read, or is it more just conversations with you where you're getting to learn the player?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's different, right? Like as a coach, we've tried everything. Over Christmas break, we had the kids read a book. There's been times during the season where once a week we had classroom sessions where we were going over YouTube clips or something different for the week. And was beneficial to some and some kids were not beneficial to others. Like, you got to remember that, they're taking classes. There's a lot of things on their minds. They got girlfriends, they got all that. So I think the premise behind all of that is very good. But at the end of the day, you have to know how to get to that specific kid. I have to know how to reach him. And again, I'll say it again, this coaching thing, that's what I'm focused on the most. How am I going to reach him? And some kids are just not, and they're going to leave, or they're not going to get it. And you know what? I've had kids come back to me and when they were 25 and 27 and apologize and say, Coach, I really didn't get it then, but I'm thankful now. And then there's plenty of stories like that. So I think there's any number of ways that you can utilize those tools, and we've tried it all. Navy SEAL training, you name it, we've done it. But it really still comes down to, when I'm recruiting kids, my job, and I tell them, listen, man, I want to make you the best version of yourself, not only the best person, but the best baseball player I can be, or you can be. And if I'm not, ultimately every kid's going to go to school, right? There's some high academic guys, but every kid has a dream of playing pro baseball. So if one of my main points as a hitting coach or a recruiting guy isn't to maximize them as a development of a baseball player, then I'm doing them a disservice. So that's kind of my thing. Going back to just the beginning of just every kid's different, and it's individualized, and how you're going to reach them.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so another big thing that I'm huge on is having people around you that you can talk to. Every one of us, can look back and figure out, name 3 or 4 guys, or, parents, uncles, coaches that, you can go to at any point and talk about your struggles. So, if you could share light with some of the people that you had, through your playing days, and the importance for our younger guys to really be able to, communicate and have people in their circle that they can talk to about what they're dealing with, the failures of it, and, not so much somebody telling them what they have to do.
Yeah, I think for me uniquely, like I'm a very loyal individual. Like, growing up where I did shaped who I am. The math type of thing for me, like, shaped who I am. So the loyalty through that was very good. The structure was very good for me because I had a lot of good mentors and coaches. But I think everybody has someone different. And from a coaching standpoint, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're impacting and influencing kids all the time. So, it's our job to not only just treat them like a person, but understand that, they're trying to compete and get better as well. So it's a fine line. I don't have anybody specifically other than, the parental type of figures or coaches I had at DeMatha, like Morgan Wooten, or guys that were like that throughout my life. I just think it was a consistency of structure at different places that kind of gave me that loyalty and confidence to kind of express myself as I went. So, for an organization like yourself, fostering that and cultivating that from all your different type of teams and groups in itself will give them that confidence as they kind of move forward.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, you've talked about just relationships a lot through the recruiting process. Is it important for you to, like, enjoy talking to a player? Like, would that be another intangible that's important to you? Like, someone that you can see having that type of close-knit relationship with?
Yeah, I think the recruiting process is interesting, right? Like, we all know, I've been adamant about this a lot. Like, I can't stand how early it is. I don't like the model in which it currently is, because we're kind of putting the kid at disservice to kind of, nowadays, if he's a freshman or sophomore, he's committing already. So, when I was a freshman and sophomore, again, I'm not trying to sound old, I was trying to find my classroom and what tie I was going to wear for school that day. And now we're trying to have kids to have conversations about continuing education when they're just starting their high school careers. I mean, I think something needs to change with that, first of all, and that's unpopular in a lot of circles. And, some people say I shouldn't talk about it, but it's just kind of the way it is. So, but back to your question, I try to talk about Maryland the first call. That's it. And after that, I'm not selling them on Maryland. I want to hear about them. This is their life. This is their career. I want to hear about what type of person they are, what makes them tick, and really find the little nuances about them. Because I think during this process, a kid needs to be authentic and not necessarily just tell me what I want to hear. And I can kind of decipher through that quickly. And honestly, man, I'm kind of bold with that. And so is all our staff is like, listen, man, don't tell me what I want to hear, because it's really just we're not going to get anywhere. So like if we're going to build a relationship and build the trust, I want to make this about you. But if you're not genuine in it and you're just saying things that you think I want to hear to get recruited, it's not going to end up being good anyway. So that is a big part in the recruiting process as far as the phone goes and those types of things. But the social media is a big factor. I'm going to go back immediately and look at their social media, look at their how they carry themselves, because you're going to get that. That's going to be their authentic self. You know what I mean? Like they can't help but put stuff out there, and you're going to get kind of an idea, and then I'll call them back out on it and just say whether it's good or bad. You know what I mean? And kind of go back to that, because I know that's kind of a trigger point of me not only learning about them, but maybe something that they'll engage in. So social media is a big thing to navigate through too, within today's recruiting landscape and all that. So we do things differently too. We try to give homework assignments. So again, it's not easy for a 14-year-old or 15-year-old to have conversations at times. So we'll give them homework assignments that they're not hard, but where it's going to force them to speak a little bit and actually allow me to listen to them and what they have to say, and give us a better idea of kind of like the character then. Because you're going to have some kids that are quiet, that are awesome, and you're going to have some kids that talk a lot but end up just talking for no reason. So I think that's part of the process now that we try to delve into and figure out, but I think it's harder for younger kids because it's just not really fair to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting idea. I really haven't heard of the homework assignment thing before. Do you mind to give us an example of like a homework assignment you give somebody?
Yeah, maybe like one of my favorite things is Nick Saban, It Takes What It Takes video. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. Just to send them a YouTube clip about that and, have them write down a few things and explain it to me and why and how that affects you in today's game. And, does that rub you the wrong way? Would that scare you to play for someone like that? Have you been challenged? Are you currently challenged? And you can just, based off how they talk, take it any different way. But just to hear their initial thought about it, and have some things prepared allows you to really learn about a kid. And you can do that from, any number of things, David Goggins, a lot of different guys that we like, or I like personally, and kind of just go off that. So it allows, again, it puts the ball in the kid's court and maybe allows them to be a little comfortable because they did watch it and it's their own thoughts instead of, me doing all the talking.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm sure that like a lot of these kids are coached up. I mean, I can tell you, even we give our players like some questions to ask on telephone conversations and things like that. But an assignment like that, you're going to get their genuine self. You can't really fake that. Like they're not being trained to yes or no sir or something like that. So that's really cool. I mean,
Yeah.
has the feedback been like, have you guys been really happy with that idea? Because it's really interesting.
I mean, no, I mean, what it does too, it starts to eliminate guys, right? Like,
Sure.
if they don't do it, if they don't care, this is stupid. That just tells me I don't care how good he is. It's just something that, like, listen, man, I'm recruiting a lot of guys and I'm up against some of the best teams in the country with better facilities and certain things like that. So what's going to set me apart? I need a certain type of kid that's going to perform and do well. It just makes it easier on me. So if a kid's not engaged, it's no different than him missing 2 phone calls at a certain time with no explanation. It's the same type of thing. It's a two-way street for sure. But, it's just something that, that kind of in itself, you just, eliminates kids. And when they ask why, I just say, hey, this is why. So if this is kind of happening now, what's going to happen when he has to lift at 6 a.m. 4 days a week and then be at practice at 3 and then has a biology exam the next day? A lot of times it goes hand in hand, you know what I mean? And And to be honest, just on another note, we talked about the recruiting. The parents are a big part. So a lot of times the parents, influence a lot of our recruiting. So that's something to your organization that is huge. I think is if the parents are kind of infiltrating it to a point where things aren't reasonable or whatever. A lot of times that makes it tough too. So you got to be careful as parents of, switching 5 organizations or this high school or that, or infiltrating yourself because you read something on the internet. Like there's a lot of problems that come from that. And a lot of times parents that were more difficult in the recruiting process, those were the kids that ended up having issues while they were here or end up leaving. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if there wasn't a correlation between like the guys who did the homework that come from good families,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the same guys who can handle that transition from high school to college much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Really cool.
everybody's route and personal life is different, so it's important to, build that relationship, build that trust,
Mm-hmm.
because these kids really don't realize, they just see the gear and the field, the stadium, the conference, don't really see themselves being there for at least three, most likely 4, sometimes even longer, years at that one place. So, it just, like I said, I think Ken says it's a great idea. It's unique, and it shows, obviously how much time you guys put in.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I started the Twitter and Instagram. It wasn't to compete or rival with anybody. It was really for recruiting. That was it, because it's very hard to have hitting conversations on the phone. Like it's such a technical thing that you can talk about one word and the kid thinks it's something totally different. So I said, there's not a lot of college baseball coaches that are actually putting content out there of what they're doing. And I didn't care what people thought. I don't care what people think, to be honest with you. It's just, I'm in it to learn. I'm in it to help. It gives, organizations like yourself and the kids an inside look on, okay, this is kind of what they do. And my route or niche in recruiting is always going to be development. It's always going to be, how can I make you the best you are, and really break it down with them to a T. Because I don't think a lot of college coaches, or maybe some coaches are doing that, but how many players, when they commit to a coach or a school, even know what the hitting philosophy is, or know the ins and outs of how they're going to be taught and how they're going to be developed? You'd be shocked to how many don't know. And then all of a sudden they get themselves in a situation, they're like, oh no, this isn't what I thought. This isn't, doesn't match up with this or that. And you'd be surprised. So it's crazy to me that happens, but it happens a lot. So, that's why I put out the content, and that's why I spend the majority of when we're really getting down to the nitty gritty, maybe before we offer a guy, is having them very clear and understand, getting on the same page and how I can improve them. And over the course of years, man, by the time these kids get here, they've been to multiple camps. Even if they're committed, they still pay to come to camp, just because it's a chance for us all to work together, build the camaraderie and all that. So by the time they get here, we're skipping a step already, of where it may take a little time to kind of figure things out. So, now that we're kind of getting into it, we're getting some of my guys in here that I actually recruited, and having those kind of conversations over the course of the years. I'm telling you, we're about to do something very special in the next couple of years, and the talent that's coming in here and the way we're building it, where it's going to be scary here in a few years. I promise you that.
Yeah,
So,
I believe it.
Well, so what have you been doing and talking with some of your guys? Yesterday, Governor Wolf in PA completely, shut down the school year, and I also coach at Roman Catholic High School in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
So our season's over, and we've had 11 seniors. We had 11 seniors this year that kind of don't have their prom. Baseball season's going, all those things we had as high school seniors. So what are some things you can say to them, and some of the things you're personally saying to, the guys you currently have, that kind of keep their spirits up and, move forward with all of this?
Yeah, well, I've even talked to, a few kids in your organization. I call them almost like the Corona calls right now. Like a big thing I do within that is challenging yourself to be better at something you weren't before. Uh, I hate to read, but I've tried to read more. I've tried to do more of that. So this is a time to better yourself in something that you never have before. It can apply to baseball. It doesn't have to, but I really challenge a lot of guys to think differently at this time because it's a unique time and get better at something. If you have to be creative on the athletic side, man, I've done P90X a bunch of times. Like get in the basement, and if you have a 4x4 space, you got to make the best of it. So this is a time where for our guys individually, like in Maryland, we've had the stay-at-home order for weeks. So depending on where they are, I can give them a little help with that as far as exercises, physically, baseball stuff, vision, books, documentaries, all that different stuff. But try to change the realm of how they're thinking instead of just being down. To use this as an opportunity right now to get better at something that they wouldn't do before, and just trying to make the best out of a bad situation right now for at least most of us or the baseball community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is going to be the longest off season these guys will ever have, barring any kind of serious injury. But and that's all the questions I had. Will, you have anything?
Yeah, no, man. Just, again, appreciate the time. Appreciate, the time when I send you random stuff, and, being that middle guy, and, being resilient, and appreciate your time. And, when you get back to me, and just building that relationship and that trust from our organization to you, and, allowing us to share this with our guys and our parents. And, we've been, as an organization, thinking of different ways and to keep our guys connected and doing different Zoom classes. Rob Rabina, puts on a home workout Zoom every day, and, just trying to stay connected. So, this allowed this conversation to happen and something unique for us to share, you guys. And, we just appreciate your time, and look forward to continue to do things in the future.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're in it together, right? Like I wouldn't be here without you guys, and it's all kind of all connected. And if we look at it like that and continue to learn and build the relationships, that's really what it's all about. So I appreciate you guys having me, and anything you guys need, I'm here.
Awesome,
Yeah,
man.
sure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
time. Stay
Yeah.
safe.
Okay. See you guys.
See you later.